Hi. Oh, oh, can't hear you. Mm.
Right. How does that, is that very
Oh, yeah,
quiet?
yeah. I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you now. It may have been
Okay.
me.
Very
Yeah.
good. Peter was here a short while ago, and a few other people. So I think they were a bit early, but here we are. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm in, I'm on the coast of Suffolk.
Oh, very
I'm
nice.
in a very interesting building, but if I was up at the top, you'd be able to see it. But I'm hiding in the sort of office down here. It's a castle, basically. Well, sort of a castle. So very nice.
Cool.
By the sea. Amazing view which I can't show you. I can show you there's some bricks, so that shows it's actually made of brick.
Proper brick
But
too.
this is relatively modern, this room I'm in right now. Okay.
Yeah, very good. So I thought today we would be a bit general, but within the area of thinking further. Let me just find some materials here. You use a Mac, obviously, right?
Absolutely, I do, yeah.
Do you have a problem with the just opening here, note for me. When you do the kind of the grab on the trackpad, the apps chooser doesn't come up. It kind of quits after a while.
I don't use these sort of big meta gestures very much, except sometimes by accident. So I can't tell you.
Oh, so how do you open apps then?
I use Command Tab, which rotates between them. And
Yeah,
I find that so convenient. I just wouldn't do it any other way.
but if it's not running, you can't do that. So how do you open an app that isn't running?
Oh, I use Spotlight, Command Space. I mean, I think I've just got used to using keyboard shortcuts. Gestures. I mean, some gestures are great, but I find my fingers usually on the keys, so I just go for that.
Right. Hi, Tom. Hi, Peter. We were just whiling away a minute talking about opening apps on the Mac. I find that the kind of the apps launcher uh, freezes or quits very often. I was just opening Keynote in the background to see if there's anything to discuss there. So,
I just I don't close them. That's my solution.
well, I mean, that's not a bad solution, but you know, there are some things like picture, you know, external hard drives. I mean, I do have 128 gigs of RAM, so I really shouldn't have to close them, but
Yeah.
it happens, right?
I find I use the same half dozen apps all the time, and so they're usually running.
Remember the days when you turn your computer off? I remember those
Yes.
days. Those days are long gone. Very occasionally, I have to reboot.
When it took a weekend to do a system update.
Yeah. These days, when I very occasionally have to reboot, it's just like disaster. Like, where's everything gone? Back
Well,
to
but
square
even
one.
on the Mac, it's great because you can just
Yeah,
tell it to put
close
things
it.
back the way they were.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, almost. So you log out of things.
So we have
Yeah.
Peter Wasilko back today. Hi, Peter.
Good morning from brunch. How are you doing? Hope you had safe travels.
Yeah, it's good to be back. And hi, Peter Demetrius as well. You look like you're in a new location. Where are you?
Hawaii,
Oh, no, that's awful.
5:30 in the morning.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here. Um, yeah, I mean, there's several things we can talk about. Obviously, take being more serious now that you point out the time of day for you. There is a book called Peak Human that's come up a few times. Have any of you read it?
It's in my Kindle
No.
library.
It's
I
really and quite an amazing book because it's
it's
the history of human civilizations from only the perspective of why did they go big and why did they go down. That's it. So it's not, kings and queens and all kinds of things. It's only that. I think there's many really good points. The reason I'm asking you guys is I got an email back from the author, who was very happy to come and present to our group at some point.
Oh, that's cool.
nice.
Yeah, he's a Swedish guy, very, very clever. He leans very heavily on the capitalism will save us all. But in the big scheme of things, so to speak, that's he has some good points.
I thought you Norwegians didn't like Swedes.
Uh,
After
yes, something like that. But
all, you just left them 120 years ago, 22 years ago.
all very amicable, all very Scandinavian, not very Viking. Yeah, so we should probably do a Monday where there's some more of us. So I'll try to get the word out and so on. So that
I read the book Collapse, which sounds like the kind of um, second half of
who is
your
that
book,
by?
Jared Diamond. So
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's very incredibly impressive, detailed, very long, detailed book. Um, I think some historians think of him as a bit of a wannabe historian. I don't know why. I mean, I was impressed, but what do I know?
Yeah, so the Guns, Germs, and Steel
That
book
guy,
was
yeah,
also very good.
that guy, yeah.
So just to kind of jump in a little bit, I hope today to be able to share with you just development-wise to have something to discuss, something good, but no. So I designed this layout for having controls on the nodes in the map, so they're not all on the toolbar, and spend a lot of time making sure it's all very logical. And then I'm told that it doesn't actually function within the framework we're using. So that was annoying. That was very, very annoying. So what we're investigating now is actually voice commands, which is not very me. But some of you probably remember some of the discussions we had during the last 2 years of research. So what we're going to try to do now is if you tap your wrist while you're in the headset, that'll turn on speech recognition. So it's like you're wearing some kind of a smartwatch. So you do that, it knows to listen, and you can say the normal commands. If you press tap and hold, then you'll get a list of all available things you can say. Because I find one of the worst things about speech recognition systems, you just don't know what you can say. Right? So if you select one node or no nodes or many nodes, you have different options for what makes sense. So that's what we're looking into now, just a bit of an update.
With speech recognition, is it possible to basically have a little snippet of dictation in the middle of a command so that I could say link and then some arbitrary string of text to, and then some other string of text to form like a hyperlink between two nodes, where I wouldn't have pre-baked the names of the nodes into the grammar of the speech recognition system?
Why would you want to do that and not drag one to the other or something like that? Just so I understand you better.
Well, maybe they don't exist yet. So I want to create the nodes by saying, link Frode Hagelin to Jonathan Finn, where Frode Hagelin and Jonathan Finn are not part of the grammar of the ASR system, but instead, once it saw the word link, it would expect a whole bunch of words other than two. And then after two, the next bunch of words would be the destination note, and then it would form the two ends of the link based upon those arbitrary strings of recognized text.
I think you should try that. I'm not sure because then you basically would need to say create new node, and then the thing is in the system that we're developing there is no link type. So the only reason something is connected is if one has a definition that includes the term of another node. But logically speaking, yeah, why not, I think. I did a demo this weekend to someone who works in some kind of an industry, and the key thing was to be able to automatically make a lot of notes based on your notes. So that's kind of related to what you're saying, Peter. So that person felt this was more useful in the current systems they have for doing link analysis to see how people and things are related. So there are many ways to go. But we should, yeah. How many of you use a headset every once in a while now? I ask the question every once in a while as well. Peter, you have a Quest 3, right?
Yep.
How do you use it?
Once in a while, if I want to go for like an immersive video of a World's Fair location or something, then it's a godsend. And also, I'll use it as an auxiliary virtual terminal, so I get 2 or 3 big screens up as secondary monitors.
Makes sense.
So that virtual monitor application is really the killer app for it so far.
Right. I mean, that's the logic we were discussing last week of how the difference between a headset and a traditional display now is such that the traditional display can be in the headset, which is, of course, what you're saying, Peter, as a virtual display. So therefore, we're using the language now of a core writing area, which is like an A4 sheet of paper, roughly, and contextual. And contextual is, of course, the more exciting bit in XR.
Yeah, so basically, what I'll do is I'll be sitting in my lazy boy with the lap desk, a Bluetooth keyboard, wireless mouse, headset on, and the actual laptop over on the side plugged into an outlet, broadcasting the screens so that I have the multiple displays inside of the headset. And I'll be typing, and the keyboard and the mouse are directly driving the Mac that's being virtually displayed inside the headset.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you have a problem with lag when you do that?
No, it's not bad at all.
Okay.
On the
what do you AirPlay into the Quest? How does that work? I haven't done this.
No, there's like a dedicated Quest app on the Mac that will feed the keyboard and mouse, and it's getting better on each release of the software.
Got it.
On the Vision Pro, Tom, there is zero lag, and the quality is about the same as looking at the physical display. It's absolutely crazy.
Mm.
No real noticeable difference. So, Tom, what kind of time do you have any chance to spend time on the headset these days, or are you?
I don't own. Well, I own an old. My wife bought an old Quest years ago. I don't even know what model Quest it is. I used it once and got a massive headache and gave up on it. I don't currently own one. I've thought about the problem I run into is that I would rather get go ahead and get a Vision Pro, but I just don't have the money for it.
Have you gone? I would recommend going to the Apple Store and having a session with the Vision Pro just to have a feel for the reality of it, because it's very, very odd, even though it is in the real world space.
Yeah.
Having it on it's so often I have to put it on just to remind myself when I'm writing up things. So it's worth. What about you, Peter Demetrius? Oh, can't hear you. Still can't hear you.
I bet he has the wrong mic selected.
There. Now you're off. And press that again, please. I'm going to ask Jonathan while you're sorting out the mic inputs.
I don't own a headset, so all I've ever had are demos and been in various kind of games. I mean, I don't do gaming, but been in various kind of what do you call them? Game pods and that kind of thing. My only experiences of the Vision Pro have been Broder giving me a couple of demos at various times, and obviously it's really impressive. It's like a different whole different experience. Whether I would sit all day and use it as a monitor, though obviously one could, um, it's tricky, isn't it? Because it's so easy to take it off and then carry on with your life and it doesn't go back on.
I found a
One
surprising
day.
thing with the headset, and that is I don't take it out of the house anymore. I thought it would be cool, in the very beginning, oh, one of those annoying people in a coffee shop with a headset where I could work with a big monitor. I don't actually find that useful. I now keep it at home so I can do room scale where I know the room and I can walk around. I don't really use the virtual display. When I write, I tend to not want so big, but I do different kind of writing to Peter. So those are very different use cases. But finding
Yeah, my use case is programming. So having the extra monitors there with more than one screen worth of documentation plus the editor. And basically, I'll have like the running application on the far left panel. I'll be working in the center and I'll have documentation on the right screen. So it's like having all three screens up at the same time. So instead of having to switch virtual desktops on the laptop, they're just there and I can glance to either side and see what's happening. So I'm able to make use of the peripheral vision too to see whether the app's crashing or not as I'm fiddling with the code.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a good use case. But trying to think of, the kind of the topic for this month of reading and writing beyond what we've done before, it's really, really hard. So this friend who was here this weekend deals with analyzing a lot of relationship between different entities. And for that person, it's relatively obvious how XR can help. Once you get beyond what can fit on a screen, you could easily map things all over the place. But for the kind of work we do, it's hard to really think into what we would actually use, wouldn't it? Isn't it? I mean, Ken Perlin said the other month he doesn't work in the headset either, and he's a teacher for it. Are there any dream cases you guys have come up with lately?
Well, I've got an observation, but this is possibly slightly changing the topic, but um, I've always I, I feel that the issue about the question, which has obviously dominated headsets all along, about whether you walk around with it or whether you don't, has not quite been solved. Although Apple obviously have made great strides, as far as I can see, by making it so it's viable to put it on and be in your current environment, which is obviously pretty essential to not bump into things. But even doing that, who would actually use the user interface, which involves them walking around and making full use of 3D, physical use of 3D in that way? It would take quite a lot to do that. And so to make full use of the space, it seems to me that one would have to design the user interface of an app or of the operating system to basically allow you to still sit in your chair and, by zooming or whatever it is, to pretend you're moving further than you actually are.
Yeah,
Um,
no, absolutely. I
I
accept.
mean, may sound like a cliche. I don't know. It's probably a cliche that discussion, but it seems there's no real getting away from it, um, unless you're prepared to actually walk around your own room, which you can do to an extent, but not all day. Maybe not all day.
I actually don't agree anymore because it's not that long ago that we used to have huge, you know, we used to have a lot of, you can see, right? Can you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
It's going to turn off this light that's flickering. So I'm not saying anybody should use any medium all day. We shouldn't use an iPhone all day or a laptop or a tablet or a headset. So, we agree on that. But when it comes to this sort of stuff, the thinking is more along the lines of, you work flat when you need to, and then you go into this when you're able to, when you want to. Because being in a meeting room and working with people, having a full wall of either maps or posters or whatever, it's not unusual, right? But the design still goes back to how we can, what kind of information we can embed in these things. So I've redone these, so you can now open more at once. Hang on, there is something else I wanted to show you guys. Because yeah, I mean, one thing I don't think we should confuse ourselves with is nobody's saying we should do this all day, right?
Sure.
So
But my point is mainly that yes, it's great that you can, even right now where you are, you can position things all over the room, but whether you want to walk across the room to actually access them, I would I would see that as a drawback. But I think
why?
in reality, you're able, you've got other ways of reaching the thing without actually physically going towards it.
I
So
don't think, with all loving respect, I don't think you mean that, because I can kind of see, I don't know what's going on with this build right now, but I can kind of see that. But also, humans have spatial memory, right? Let me see if I find a good one here. And that's the wrong history. So when you move to a certain part of the room, you have different expectations of what you find there, right? So
yeah, so indeed, so it is very useful to physically move around. Um, my point is in the limit, taken to extremes, it's like walking around the library, and there's this tension between are we trying to make it so you do walk around the virtual library, or are we trying to make it so you don't actually have to do the walking around bit of walking around your virtual library? Um, and I always feel pulled in both directions.
yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I don't actually find that to be an issue. But it's like saying, I have a laptop, I can take it to the cafe, but why would I have to go to the cafe, right? You don't have to walk into the space. For some reason, there's
Sure.
something wrong here. But anyway, yeah, I'm not saying you have to do that, but it's like, I've got these running shoes. Why should I have to leave the house, right? I'm not trying to be facetious. I'm just saying that there are different times and different modes. Sometimes you want to have pen and paper, right? You shouldn't always have to have pen and paper, but if you have the affordance of having knowledge in the room, like in a bookshelf and other places, I don't understand why that would be a bad thing.
Well, I think we're not necessarily disagreeing. My point to merge the two perspectives would be to say, yes, you can set. It's very useful to be able to set things up around even a very large space, and you're saying, indeed, what it can be very useful to actually physically go to a different part of a large space so you can see local things around you or whatever it is, and put things in a local kind of group or something. Um, but um, also, I would suggest one needs a way to jump around a large space in some way without physically going there. And maybe it's a bit like, as we were talking before, different ways of accessing an app on the Mac. You want to be able to do it by a search method. You want to be able to do it by a spatial method, like various gestures and so on the trackpad.
Well, let's put it this way. There are ways to do that. I mean, Brandel showed us one where instead of moving in the space, like with the joystick, you move the whole space around your head.
Sure, indeed, yeah.
I mean, even in author's map, you can select all the nodes and move them all as one unit. Right, and that's fine, but I think this is why I think it's important that we all try to be in the headset a few times, because first of all, sitting down all day is not a great thing. Neither would be standing up all day. We're talking about different modes for different times, right? So to be able to use the space, it also maps into knowledge in the brain, literally. I just don't see that as a detriment. But anyway, that's I think this is a PDF HTML type discussion that we can go down rabbit holes. But I see Peter has a hand up.
Yeah, I was saying one of my dream use cases would be to have something along the lines of Google Earth in the headset so that I could walk through a street view of some location and also superimpose one location on another. And like the dream application here would be imagine that you had the 1939 New York World's Fair and the 1965 New York World's Fair both loaded so that you could be standing at a location in Flushing Meadows and you could cross fade between the two fairs to see what the pavilion layout was in one versus the other. And even with just joystick navigation, you'd have that sense of scale that I can't get from just looking at maps and blueprints.
Yeah, I mean,
So that'd be a dream headset only kind of a thing.
it would be, and I think, oh, I see there's some notes in the comments, and hi, Brandel. We're talking a little bit about kind of the spatiality of knowledge, and Jonathan was saying he doesn't want to have to get up off the chair necessarily. Of course, sometimes I don't want to pretend, Jonathan, we completely disagree. And I said, you know, Brandel's already done that with the Bob Horn mural where you move the whole space. And Peter was now talking about a recreation of a physical space. I agree with those concerns. And I agree, Peter, that to use spatial computing for spatial information makes sense. I think it's a little bit harder for the knowledge thing. Brandel, I was referring to a friend who was here this weekend who works with, I can't say what industry, so you can guess, but works with a lot of people and a lot of relationship and needs to see them. So that person got very excited about not just having to use a monitor anymore, but using the entire room to have different entities that matter. So you can see what did this person so and so and all of that stuff, right? So that's a relatively clear use case. I think it's still a challenge to figure out how to help a university student, let's say, spatially. Thank you, Peter Demetrius, for those links. I'll have a look. We know of some of this work. Mar was related to us through the work we did with Sloan.
The break the window presentation from last week.
Looks like it.
Yeah, yeah. For people who aren't familiar with things like virtual Mac display, I was looking on ultra wide. I don't know if you've done this, Rhoda. You can get it to be 10,200 pixels wide, which is silly, clearly, but it is also very interesting to go like, what on earth do you do with a desktop that is 10,000 by 4,000 and or no, 10,000 by 3,000, I think. Yeah, like because of the way that Windows typically present the size of the objects and things like that, and the fact that you can scale them up to be really large, like it is still just a flat display, but it is almost unseemly how many pixels you have to address. And it's really interesting as a sort of a suggestion and as a provocation, like what might somebody do with a 3,000 pixel wide just browser window? And yeah, it's interesting because like obviously at this stage, like nothing, the sort of the point of Mars paper or the paper that Mars like fourth author on is that very little today is sort of established, is set up in such a way that there's a role not for ultra wide windows, but for semantically distinct surfaces and functions. But that's something that I was sort of advocating for recently. It's like if you can say not where to put stuff, but what stuff is for, then you can do a much better job about reasoning about the environments. It's sort of the fundamental premise of augmented
Well,
reality.
that didn't work very well. Sorry, I was trying to demonstrate that, but doing a virtual
Yeah.
display and mirroring was not a good combo. Please continue.
Well, no, especially you don't have the developer strap, do you?
No, I don't. Will that be a
If-
use for that?
It means that you're talking to your Mac over a wired connection, which can have much better, latency and other things like that. Not necessary, but it is for me, but not necessary for you. But it is a publicly available component. Um, when I flash with the latest sort of daily update of however broken visionOS may happen to be at times. I mean, mostly it's pretty good. I need to use that cable, but for you, it would just mean much faster I/O to your Mac.
Yeah. So obviously this, actually there is something similar to get your point across about that, and that is panoramas.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if
Sometimes
you
the
ever
eye
looked at.
tracking just goes, okay, like here, yeah. So for instance, this is very, very wide. So the ultra wide, it goes almost 180 degrees, right?
The ultra wide can go under 180. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think so.
it's absolutely mad.
Yeah.
I just got really annoying news today, Brandel, that adding notes to hang on, adding notes to nodes in author just doesn't work in the framework we're using. I don't know why. And there's something very odd happening here with the lack of yeah. Okay, so now I can speak a little bit to what you were saying earlier, Jonathan. So you can see me now, right? Just to double check.
Well, you're slightly out of frame now, but yes.
No, but you can see my view of the world, right?
No.
Oh, that's annoying. Okay, hang on. Thank you for telling me. I'm going to go back here. Okay, and then I'm going to read broadcast. There my view. Right, now you can see, right?
Yes.
So in trying to kick along the argument discussion on what's useful with spatialized stuff, let me just go through a few relatively obvious things. Turn that as low as I can. So first of all, it can be used as just a huge wall. So that goes back to having the display, the screens, right? As was in that link. That actually has a value too. You can have a huge, like here we have a printed history map. So if this was virtualized, like Bob Horn's, I think that has real value. But one of the magical things is once you start, sorry, this is a very weird build. We have a new design method for the nodes. Then this is really amazing. When you put it behind you and you can see links like that.
Mhm.
I know I've shown you this many times, but there becomes, when you start, because what you've seen so far has only been small amount of information. But we, some of these, I haven't made any big ones, but they can now have a full screen's worth of information on them. And that becomes very different.
So do these individual nodes expand and contract when you say they can have full screens? Is it that they have different modes for being able to display that, or?
Yeah, I mean, just because we changed the whole architecture, it means, let me just crash this again. yes, they expand and contract a lot more. And to the points raised, it makes it much more able to do the walking towards to see something, that kind of progressive disclosure. Sorry, I just got a new build and it's doing weird things, so I apologize for wasting your time. Maybe this one, okay. Yeah, so it's not a huge amount of information on this particular map, but you can see, it can contain a lot. And you can see the different kind of categories with these things. It becomes something different. Okay. Let's try to do this together. I'm still sharing my normal screen, right?
Yes, we see the LinkedIn window.
So I'm going to do a new document. This is a, whoops. This is a live test. I'm going to go to this web page and just copy, just to have lots of text, right? And I'm going to define LinkedIn with all of this stuff. Put all that in, leave it as a concept, that's fine. Live test, give that a minute. Put the headset back on. Because it is quite fascinating what the medium can hold, what the medium can do, how it makes a difference. So, oh, hang on, I haven't made this. You can't see me yet, can you? 1 second. Okay, so here is this map. There's just one node now. There it is.
Can anyone hear me?
I can
Yes,
hear
we
you
can hear
now,
you,
yes.
Peter.
Yes.
Oh, okay. My headset's messed up and I got noise in the background. But I dropped those links because those are interesting, break the window and there's a bunch of other ones that I've been collecting and reading up on. They're doing the actual, computer humor interface work. Let's give this to people and see, can you live here? Is this something you can deal with? So, I found those very interesting just over the past week, saying, "Oh, I've just discovered them." Some of those old stuff from like 2025, but uh, still good stuff. And the fact that they're running it against real people um, is good to see. The part I'd say worry about is all the balkanization happening with the UX. Oh, you can do this in an Apple Pro, you can't do it in a Quest. Cheapness of hardware. It's going to be it's early days before mouse standardization, basically. What gestures are you going to use? I mean, I think tapping and ray. There's a lot of interesting things coming out of the game community that's going to make how to interact. But I think what you're doing with Author to try to see how to get documents and actually work in it is much more as interesting. And I think, like you said, you're doing work like Alan, you're doing work way in advance of where the interface standards are. Uh, and hopefully I'll be able to get myself a nice headset and start to play more with things. I, I retired and lost all my access to all the free stuff. So I've got to actually
Look,
pony up money for things myself.
if you're in the Bay Area, I'm happy to show you. I've got a couple, so we can do things like spatial FaceTime and things like that.
Yeah, I got to make more friends over at universities I used to deal with and play with them. But again, it's going to be a problem for how many thousand people are going to have this thing when you're building for you're building for 1 million people. No, you got to have this degraded WebXR flat 2D, 3D game interface for the foreseeable future because not enough people are going to have the nice headsets. So you can play games with it, but if you're trying to do make a market or make money, for instance. You can do a niche, or you can kind of try to be broad. And I don't think anyone's figured out the broad, even Meta, cutting back so much on Meta stuff. They couldn't figure it out with all their money.
I think
That's a
it's
warning sign that can't get there today.
I think it's partly up to us to make it compelling to work in the headset. Brandel, before I forget, and Peter, I'll address your points properly. Johan Norberg, the guy who wrote Peak Human, is very happy to come and present to the community. So we should find a date.
Oh,
I
cool.
don't know if you've had a chance to look at the book. It's really compelling
Peak
stuff.
human, no.
Oh, it's really, I think you would be absolutely someone to like it. So Peter, the reason I loaded this one page that you saw me walk up to the bigger open node, right, guys? Was that shared? Okay.
Yeah.
So basically now it can contain a lot more stuff, almost anything. And that changes what it is. It really does. Because Jonathan's point about sitting and standing is something really worth discussing in depth. And when something is far away from you, guess what? You see less, right? So if we're only dealing with smaller nodes, then even the titles can get too small to be useful. So of course, we've talked many times about what kind of visualization we can do. So if you have a full page layout of something, it becomes its own icon automatically. You don't have to do anything magic. It's just you're far away from it. You only see it roughly, right? So that changes it. And it also provides a more compelling reason to go up to it because you may have a constellation of things. And the fact that, Jonathan, we're having this discussion, please understand, I'm very grateful. I'm not like, no, 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 it must be walkable. This is exactly the kind of stretching of our points that I was desperately hoping for. So Peter Demetrius, I don't call it balkanization yet. What I call it is a Cambrian explosion potential. I am all in the Apple ecosystem now purely because it's possible to use the top level hardware. We did WebXR for Sloan and it was all great at an experimental level. But now I really want to be able to sit down and get some work done. And hopefully, in this one respect, I feel a bit like Doug Engelbart when he did a 68 demo. Not in any way is that what I'm doing, but the feeling of something was shown. Now, please, everyone, just copy it and get on with it. So these are experiences that hopefully will be inspirations to others to steal, basically. Except for, of course, the data that should be easily interchangeable.
So interestingly enough, I've been working this week on Engelbart's stuff, which I've sent you a few things, but I think we need to think about this as we're in 1962, not 1968. And what is our vision for where we want to be in 1968, or in our case, 2032, let's say? What kind of space, forget about the technical limitations, build our way there. I feel like we're spending an awful lot of time arguing about mouse shapes without really knowing what the mouse is for.
Oh, I don't know, Tom. I don't know.
I'm just saying that having that larger goal, I mean, that's to me what really is the big deal with Engelbart is that he always had that larger vision. He didn't quite get there, and he was always disappointed because nothing else seemed to live up to that. But what is the larger vision? Where do we, if we don't have a real clear vision of where we're going with that, we're going to spend an awful lot of time messing around in the rooms. That's my concern.
Let's address that properly, but I really didn't notice Peter's hand. So let's go to Peter and come back to this, okay?
Sorry.
No, that was my fault.
Okay.
I thought it was an old hand.
Yeah, no problem. I just dropped a meme in the chat, and it occurred to me instead of mirroring 3 different desktops on my Mac, since I'm really relying on my peripheral vision a lot when I'm in the 3 monitor mode, how about peripheral semantic multiplexing with 3 copies of the same desktop, only the left copy and the right copy could have sort of a color-coded overlay thrown over the same content that I'm looking at on the main screen. So maybe nodes that had a lot of text attached to them could be highlighted in blue on the left copy of the monitor. The main copy of the monitor wouldn't show that, and then on the right copy of the monitor, we could have color coding suggesting maybe the date or source of origin. But anyhow, we'd be able to have the two peripheral displays showing facets that if you tried to overlay them all on your main display would make it too cluttered to work with. So 3 copies of the same desktop, but with different semantics on the 2 side copies. So that's the idea. I just wanted to get into the record now before it zips away with the other torrents of thoughts that are constantly cascading through my mind.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Peter.
that's really fun, Peter. So something that that may not be obvious to people who are not deep in the weeds of web development is that if you open a web page and then you open another copy of that web page, then they know, and they can't not, unless one's in sort of private browsing incognito, that they know that they're both open, and they can talk to each other with full fidelity. And so something that I've done in the past is just to drive multi-monitor screensaver support and things like that. But what you could do is if you opened 2 windows of Wikipedia, for example, then you could permit one of them to be the subordinate and provide sort of incidental information, sort of construct finding devices. And you mentioned the World's Fair sort of counter position. Something that I think about a lot is being able to construct a temp like a canonical temporal finding device, so that if Wikipedia is open and you then have one window that can be kind of devoted to sort of a master timeline, essentially, of everything that exists on it. That I think that there are some really interesting things to do with. Yeah, I've talked a little bit before about just collecting things under close reading or second reading. I think being able to kind of see simultaneous view specs of something would be a really interesting use of the real estate that we have under these kinds of regimes. So a long way of saying I agree with you, Peter. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, that's very cool. And to go back to Tom's 62 versus 68 perspective, I just briefly wanted to mention that I've been using Claude to help me with the development of this work. I don't do the programming myself, but Brandel, with all due respect, the documentation for visionOS is a bit much, to put it that way, right? So I say to Claude, I would really like to have this feature. Is it possible? And then it tells me what the things are, and then it gives me a bit of code and I send it on. And then I get a message back saying, no, we implemented in this Swift thing, not this other Swift thing, so it doesn't work here. But at least I can be a part of the discussion now. And I think that's going to be a huge thing. So Claude Code is great for coders. The LLMs who understand code is also fantastic for middlemen designer people. Now, Tom, the whole being stuck in the page, just being stuck on the mouse, I agree with your perspective 100%, but I don't really think that is what we're doing. What I think we're doing is big vision trying to develop here, realities over here. And I'm not talking about realities as in the current version of the headset. I'm talking about the realities of what can be built in them. So I don't care about weight or cost or distribution or power now. I expect those to be solved over time. But even within that, do you have the information like this or at an angle? All of these things will probably be around basically forever because there are more conceptual issues than implementation, right? But the reason I talked earlier about seeing more of this in the headset, it's incredibly different once you're standing in it than if you're imagining things here and there. It's such a difference. And to try to understand that better, that kind of relates to what we can build. And as far as the 62 paper notion, don't forget, Doug had Joe walk you through a system. So conceptually, it did exist. And as far as I remember, it was very much about getting many small things possible that built up to a bigger interaction experience, right? So as far as I think we have established a few things. Number one, you need to be able to have your own proper data in there. Otherwise, it becomes a toy, right? So that's number one. How you do that is not necessarily trivial. Import, export is one thing. Being able to work within the different devices seamlessly while maintaining the strengths of the different environments is interesting. And then once you get in there, how you, I really don't mind if you guys fight me on this, but how you open a node is really important as an example. It's not, on one level, it's easy to say, and closed node should do this, and open node should do that. But that has to be implemented somehow. If it's in a 2D interface, it's relatively clear. But so as an example, when the node is closed, how many lines of text should it show? That's a decision that has to be made. So I've made it 3 maximum. How many characters width? All of these things contribute to how you use the space, right? And then when the node is open, do you still see the term or just the definition? That's something that I've now built into Author so the user in settings can actually toggle. So there's a lot of experimenting the user can do as well. So then the question becomes, what is the difference between a select and a move and an open and a close? Because you can look at something currently in XR and move it without selecting it. I may remove that feature. It can actually be a bit confusing. You have so much control. So the way you choose to shape the control becomes a huge thing of what it is. Right? So let's say you've selected 5 things over there and you pinch and move accidentally your eye is on something else, you move that other thing. That can frequently be annoying. So that's why I think, Tom, that to really, really experiment will help us get to the bigger vision, because the bigger vision, and I'm sorry for this long speech here, but the bigger vision is clearly to help us get to grips with our knowledge. So as we produce it, we can have a better clue what's going on in our brains to an extent, right?
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you, and I'm not saying what we're doing is unproductive. I'm saying there's always got to be some iteration and experimentation along the way. The thing about augmenting human intellect and Joe and stuff is that he had that bigger vision and worked his way backwards to the tasks necessary to get that vision in place and made a list of that, which might give us more focus on there's a tendency to go after what's right in front of you, the struggle that's right in front of you, and to give us a better focus on what the ultimate aim of that struggle is. And that's all I'm saying. I mean, what does that knowledge space actually look like? Not what we can imagine it doing. Because, in a punch card era, the knowledge space was a bunch of cardboard punch cards that you fed into a machine and it gave you some magical reply if you were lucky. But we're in a paper era. We still are very much burdened by that at some level. And so what does that knowledge environment of 2032 look like that we're, are we missing something here?
I kind of agree with you. And of course, Doug had his vision of tool set, human set on top of human built-in capabilities. And what we can do is a combination of those, of course. But it has to be able to be a thing, right?
Sure.
And
I'm not saying we struggle with these things.
Yeah, but also, Tom, for the last 3 years, or Brandel might correct me, maybe it's a bit longer. I have been asking the community and myself to try to write what you're saying. And as Doug is known to have said, dreaming is really hard work.
Yeah.
Right. So to try to dream a bit more practically is of course part of the importance here.
Right.
I mean,
I'm sorry for the audio problems, Peter, but I appreciate what you're saying about the overlay stuff. It's something that I think about a lot as well. something that I would really love as a superpower in general, with whether it's happens in augmented systems or not, is to be able to basically have an overlay of anytime there's a number, to be able to kind of track the number and see the time series of it. I, for better or worse, mostly for worse, a lot of my time on computers is spent seeing how long it's going to take for certain numbers to converge. Um, or to reach certain values or relationships and things like that, and to have a system that sort of for free allows me to observe those and make sort of higher level things without having to scrape or copy paste and put them into Excel or whatever would be really wonderful. But yeah, so like that notion that you have lenses or overlays or things like that that can be kind of maneuvered or negotiated or modified as distinct from the underlying data would be really cool.
So Peter and Brandel have been pressuring Tom and me a little bit. That was very interesting because you went bang back to the implementation. I feel that was very useful in bringing the whole discussion forward because, of course, I develop from where I am. It's easy for me to think, but what you both are thinking about, I can imagine a space similar to Author now, with, you know, you have these things, but you have a way to, because this is the thing, Brandel, visionOS is so limited, but whatever. Imagine you do something with one hand and the other hand, now suddenly all the nodes, you pull out another layer, similar to what you're talking about, right? So you can, or push back. So you can see the histories of each single node or card appear behind it, right? That kind of, I mean, because right now I just have these static cards that can go big and small. It's really quite pathetic. But as a thinking space, if we have a piece of knowledge that can visually be text, picture, animation, 3D object, whatever, as a small thing and a big thing, probably will last a while conceptually. It's almost like a Finder desktop icon that you can open and close, right? Now, Peter, what you've been pushing on is different overlays.
Yep.
That could be very, very interesting. So maybe, because it's easy in our 2D world to think of just flat overlays and changes, but I mean, Brandel, you know, you're talking about numbers. I mean, maybe you could have a function in the space where when you do this pushing or pulling, they know what they're supposed to push and pull on, right? And also, instead of having to choose, do you see an author's name or a picture? You know, we have the idea of maybe changing your glasses virtually, but also to be able to just pull out and you see a little person coming out, almost like a cartoon. How cool would that be, right? And
Yeah.
also connections.
Yeah, and to I was going to say not to bang on about it, but absolutely to bang on about it. One of the ways in which these kinds of capabilities are enabled is through the semantic transparency of what the contents of a document or application, to the extent that those differ, are, and being able to have a full and thorough representation of those semantics is something that people are saying is AI these days. Um, and that's true. It's probably something that people can't just get through a sort of through demanding that developers construct a completely thorough semantic representation of things. But the web is a place where those things come, if not for free, then for a much better slate of reasons in terms of how documents are constructed with constraints, and how the benefits for accessibility or localization and other things like that flow pretty naturally from it. So I think that while what we're talking about is not intrinsically the web, that a number of the things that have been developed for and in the web are absolutely crucial for conceiving of what a better world looks like when applications kind of behave more in this way.
It also goes to highlight that if we're going to have a fluid or liquid interaction environment, we need to be very, very careful what we freeze. And if you don't freeze stuff, you can't move. it becomes quicksand, to use the analogy, which is why I think it's very, very important to make documents and make the documents into whatever format. I asked Claude today to go through a author-produced document and verify and check the quality of the visual meta. And it was very happy with the embedding. It said it was super clean. There was some line break issues, which was very, very easy to fix, and that was it. So when you say web, Randall, I do agree. We can learn a lot. And maybe one of the key things of the future is to build an offline web browser. That the key is you download packages, and if you're online, fine, but you treat these situations, these web pages, as pages.
Absolutely. I mean, EPUB is one of those. Whether it's a success, I don't know. I have never succeeded in authoring one myself. But the premise of, because I totally take your point that link rot is an absolute scourge. That the sort of instability of the fundamental delivery mechanism of the web is something that causes a tremendous amount of challenges. But that said, the number of apps, even sort of almost entirely locally controlled apps on a computer these days that are secretly Electron is just frankly embarrassing. And I think is sort of really a case in point that the sort of conceptual separations and the functions of a web page are useful so far beyond the notion of that sort of kind of fraying tapestry that is the distribution network of where things are and who can kind of steal an ex New York Times link for fun and profit. So yeah, I think. But I would also say, like BibTeX, LaTeX, like these are in many regards kind of precursors to web-like semantics that I also think are very, very valuable. And so and it's really wonderful that LLMs can do such good, basically translation between sort of different representations like that. That I think that we can kind of lean on as a capability for easing this transition as well.
We do need, Tom, to deal with your question. Whom to augment first, and to augment doing what? My own work is one thing now. University students augment them writing to think. That's the whole thing. And I've started doing some ads now. I need to have actual users increase it a little bit. And writing is thinking is kind of the tagline. But in terms of our discussion, I think it's probably good if we have an agreement of, not that has to be one, but of what kind of 1962 papers we're writing, Tom.
Yeah, I agree. Although I would reverse that. I would say thinking is writing, as opposed to writing is thinking.
Well, it is possible to think without writing.
Exactly.
But when you are writing, well, I mean, so what this comes from is the notion of generative writing. So if you have a quick note and you jot it down, that's just writing. But if you are trying to work out a big argument, of course, then it's generative, and the writing changes what you think, and you edit and all of that stuff. Yeah.
Sure. No, it's a process, but I do want to emphasize that writing is a particular kind of process, and it conditions your thinking in a certain way, which may be good. I'm not going to put a value on that. And as a writer, I certainly work this way, but I want to entertain the notion that there are other ways of generating thought that could be manipulated in an XR environment that are not possible on a flat screen or using a keyboard.
Yeah, that's exactly the point, 100%. That's why we have to talk about writing and reading beyond what it was when it was flat, 100%. And it's really interesting what, for instance, one thing I wanted to do, I have a PDF reader for Vision, just as a fun little thing. I haven't done it, but I want to do the reality kit so that you can choose to have the PDF onto your physical surface of your table. So you can make it whatever size you want, but you can also lean down when you read it and, touch something, which can be very useful. But going in the opposite direction, like you're talking about, Tom, yes, the whole point is there will be some traditional writing, paragraph or whatever, but how do we get to the next authorship stage? That's exactly the question.
I mean, there's a natural human impulse to reach for the familiar, and that's what I'm trying to be very self-aware of. And as I interact with AI, and I can see where it generates levels of discomfort for people who are used to writing a lot. And I certainly have asked those questions myself. But as things have gone forward, and I'm finding I'm having deeper and deeper discussions with the AI, that the conversation, which is in text form for the most part, has is more than I could possibly have in a posting a blog post or a discussion post and then having someone answer it. That and it's an interesting conversation. It's an interesting experience. My question, my thinking about this is, okay, so how does that change the semantic space that we're thinking about for 2032? I mean, Doug did have a very clear idea of where he wanted the that thinking space to be in 19, but he didn't, I don't think he set 1968, but where he wanted it to be before his funding ran out. And he achieved his team achieved an amazing amount of that. But I mean, at the end of the day, the mouse is just an interface for the L brain fart, the online system. And in and of itself was a massive leap forward, but it was still part of that larger vision.
Yeah, but Tom, you need to write more about what that vision is, I think.
Yeah. I am. I'm working on that. I'm trying to dig that out myself right now. So I won't lie to you, it's not easy.
No, it's not easy. I'm having the same issues here. Actually, no. I spend a little bit of time on that, but most of what I spend my time on now is what do I need to do to actually myself, one human being, want to work in this thing?
Hmm.
It's not obvious.
Yeah. And the thing I found with AI is that my mental workspace is very fluid and it's very expanding. And that's different experience because it's when you're dealing when you're dealing with people, even with, brilliant people, you only have a limited amount of time. Even if this is your best friend, you only have so and so much time to talk to them because they've got a life, they've got other things to do, they've got other people to talk to. Whereas the AI is a constant, what about this? What about that? You can be the annoying little 3-year-old all day long, and it just really changes the canvas of the way your brain maps that information. Eventually, you want to sort of pull it all together, and that's kind of where I am right now. The struggle I have on the AI side is that I've got all of these threads that are semi-related, but they're not. But trying to somehow pull them together, the chatbots are not well designed for that. Basically, you kind of have to sort of copy and paste the whole damn chat, which in my case can be hundreds and hundreds of pages, and get recursive with it and things like that. But it's still, and also jumping back and forth between different chatbots. And I have the same problem with my books. There's usually stacks of books around me because I'm like working on this and I put it down and and so I think the AI only makes that worse. And this is speaking to somebody who's probably got ADD but has never been diagnosed. Uh, but to me, that's an incredibly fulfilling experience. If that XR environment can help me pull that back together again in a way that and on an ongoing basis as a way of visualizing that thought
Yeah.
and
Well,
show it to me.
well,
That's the kind of vision I'm talking about, I think.
yeah. I mean, one thing, and no, I haven't heard back much from the people at Apple. But one thing I have requested is for author to have permission to do something as basic as open files, which cannot be done except through the open dialogue. Because one of the, if we go McLuhan-esque about it, or at least attempt to, if you look at what does a virtual reality headset give you, it gives you space, near infinite space, if you combine physical with virtual movement, right? And once you have something that is everything, wouldn't you want to be able to access everything? Right? So I think that's a really, really big thing. Right now, the open dialog box on the visionOS, with all due respect, the nicest thing I can say it is it's absolutely awful. It's so horrible. It looks like it was made by Lego. By that, I mean, it's got a lot of padding. So if I want to see the whole name of a file, for instance, I have to try to grab a tiny little bar and move it across. These are early days. The Mac had same thing. So I'm complaining out of love about these things, right? But when it comes to realizing the kind of things you're talking about, Tom, I really have a gut feeling that once you're in the headset, you should have access to everything through these mechanisms of maps or whatever it is, not just an open dialogue. So that's kind of an implementation thing, but it goes to the philosophical thing, Tom, that, within Doug's augmentation, I should be able to have that stuff there, this stuff here, blah, 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 organize my mind, and then change it. Right now, we're dealing with a device that is ridiculously powerful, graphically amazing, but for safety reasons, development reason, and so on, it's quite limited.
The challenge there.
I will.
Go ahead, Tom.
Go ahead, Brandon. I was going to say real quick, the seeing everything can also be overwhelming, though. That's the one thing I wanted to say.
Oh yeah, and that's the whole point. Hiding and revealing, I think, is the number one challenge. Brandel, over to you. Sorry.
The difference between 68 or 62 or whatever and now in terms of what the sort of the scope of why we sort of experiment with these things is that nobody it's like maybe people inventing cars and people doing testing on and playing with cars back in the 1870s or 1880s. The first internal combustion is attached to like 88 or so. It was relatively safe. There were lots of open fields that people could sort of cruise around, and there wasn't a lot. Whereas, by the 1960s, people were testing vehicles on the open road and conducting most of their lives through them. And today, computing, has succeeded in such a phenomenal sort of dimension that it means that in essentially any testing is done on the open road with any of these connective technologies, and so it does make it really challenging and unfortunate. Peter Wasilko, you've sort of bristled at this in the past, and I'm totally sympathetic. The kinds of things that can be done with something. The problem is how can you ring fence those particularly exciting, particularly terrifying capabilities such that they don't leak and end up compromising your banking app. I don't know the answer to it.
I know a little bit of the answer to it, sitting on the other side of the fence, so to speak. Let me open documents. Documents are self-contained things. And of course, macros and Word and all of that can be destructive. Of course it is. But if it is a document that the user has created, with some sort of an ID, it should be openable in many, many ways. I mean, right now, a lot of what Tom is pushing towards, and I greatly appreciate it, the bigger vision, how you access something, how you nest things so you can close and deal with the mess, it's very artificial. As I think you've all seen, I have a method whereby an AI will go through a document, find your notes, and make nodes out of it. And that's okay. But what about things that aren't in that document? It is not accessible when you're in the headset. And that is a very, very strong limitation. It almost goes back to CD-ROM days. It's so ghettoized, to use that term, that the knowledge can't easily reach out. And of course, I understand when you're talking about a link, I accept that unless there's been a lot of security, you have to open it via the web browser, via Safari, no question about that. But it is a bit of a hamstringing thing at the moment. So it means that a lot of the bigger vision we can't do. And Peter, Demetrius, it's really cool to see morning breaking in Hawaii behind you, I have to say. That's quite special. Here's a funny thing. I'm going to tell people now I had a meeting in Hawaii today. Yeah, that is super cool. Oh, where are you? What is that?
Yeah, I'm at a big hotel. They have conferences and stuff. I'm just staying here a few days before heading up to family.
Super cool.
But I enjoy you guys. I get up at 5:30 in the morning to see you guys talk. This has been fantastic. Hopefully I can get my audio working better. Hopefully you're not being treated to the sounds of everything here.
No, it's well filtered.
I got birds and roosters going off.
I had a meeting, as I think I mentioned, with the Voyager company in Japan, and they originally started with Bob Stein, Voyager, and CD-ROMs and all of that stuff. And they had some old art from the 80s of these layering things that you guys talked about just now. Peter, I'm just realizing this because the meeting was in Omotesando in Tokyo, and my favorite coffee shop in London is called Omotesando. So if I go have a coffee here, then I'm pretending I'm there. So all these connections, but yeah, we need to dream further. It's really, really hard. The thing is, let me be it's going to sound patronizing, but it's to help me think. If a piece of knowledge is externalized from the brain, it needs to have a form. That form can be a picture, it can be an abstract color, shape, wave, it can be a sound, it can be text. It can be a myriad of things, but it has to have some instantiation, to use computer words, right? So with the bigger vision of helping us think and to generate new thoughts and understanding, especially for, let's say, a university student, roughly, what form should externalized knowledge take? I'm all about text, but I accept that's not really the end of the line. There are many more things. So if you guys have more thoughts on that, and it becomes really, really tricky. Like when we write down little notes for ourselves to find them later, very, very rarely will a few keywords find our notes, right? It's almost like you need the whole damn note to find it.
Well, I found that the searching for things, particularly with AI, you can you find more things. You're just following the hyperlink that the author explicitly put in. And how do you put those together with Notebook LM or this typing mind thing that is on the chat? It's very interesting. I have to go expose and see what it is. How do you put together the links, but eventually you want to author something. I think that's where you got the writing for the mind kind of focus on your deliverable. You're trying to do something with author. I think keeps you focused well. Otherwise, we're just going to keep boiling the ocean like we have for the past 40 years of doing all this graphical stuff in caves and in all these other environments that eventually die off. I mean, I think Windows icon, the WIMP interface, I think is kind of going to be sticky for a while. I don't see it getting replaced anytime soon.
It's very interesting the way you bring up AI, because my AI of choice currently is Claude. One of the reasons I like Claude is the visual interface. It's easy to read. The kind of tabbed-based system works very, very well, and it does exactly as you said, Peter. It will find stuff that I wasn't necessarily searching for directly. Of course, that brings up many issues, including how do you author into that environment without just creating AI slop? So there's got to be, once you've done your proper thinking and you put it out there, it needs to be in a way that it can be referred to by this. But of course, one of the amazing things, and I think this is very much Tom's street, is if you ask, let's say we ask the AI while we're in the headset to talk about Doug Englebart's vision. It'll give us a few paragraphs with some references. We should be able to, I can't remember who said it in the chat, but tear those things off and put them into space as sources. So you can start building a little bit of a shape. And then of course you get into the issue of managing that space. And that's where I so desperately want nesting, which I find really conceptually hard to do at the moment. I want to be able to say, oh, Tom, you're talking about Doug's vision. Now, hang on a second. This is what I mean.
I really think that's what Wiki has tried to get to, where you try to put little info nuggets, but you end up with this web of flat text, href little things. You got, Ted Nelson's, intertwingling kind of thing going on there with text talking to pieces of text. What containers you put them in, you have your little expandable note where you pull it out and you can see all the related things underneath that you've manually put in there as things, and then flatten it back out and say, this is the one thing I'm referring to.
It's so exciting.
I love some of the visual things you're coming up with that are just pretty straightforward stuff. It's not rocket science, but you're actually using them effectively.
It was so exciting to see your hand there, Peter, because I could imagine, you have this result thing, and then you do something with your second hand, and then you pinch, and then maybe all the sources come out, or whatever. There's so many things that can be done, but it requires tech, money, and dialogue, and we get the dialogue here, so thank goodness for that.
Yeah. Something that I also think is absolutely crucial based on what you were doing there, Peter, is a really, really robust and overzealous undo queue to be able to make sure that those things are properly recoverable. One of the things that a lot of applications fail to do is either have a good deep undo queue. A lot of professional grade digital content creation tools are much more robust at that. But even then, a lot of them don't necessarily understand that that view actions and other and that can include the document, but it might be also the panels, the view panel, like the tool panels and things like that. Those are actions of a kind that warrant being kind of recorded as semantically significant, such that they can be kind of rolled back or intertwingled, so that people have the ability to do that. I think Jim Holland, UCSD's context restoration is an absolutely essential concept. And unfortunately, the present moment of surveillance capitalism made it so that when Windows was talking about rewind or I can't remember what it was called, the mood was very wrong for them to be able to kind of propose that as a successful kind of idea. But I think it's critical for people to kind of recognize that, no, really, really full-throated context restoration, undos, recoveries of actions of every single conceivable kind are essential for making people feel safe and secure in their modification of the workspace environment to be able to kind of come up with these alternative views. So, yeah. I hope we get to a point where those are sort of philosophically acceptable again, because it's a necessary step in the development that we need to take on next.
I'm so grateful for today's discussion. I'm thinking of having, I have the music podcast, which is hilarious. But I'm thinking of having these also as podcasts that can be subscribed to. I hope you guys are okay with that. They're going up on YouTube anyway. And it's kind of interesting because most of what we talk about is rubbish, as in any conversation. So it's really, really good for us live to kind of be in it. But I hope that there may be some value for people, maybe later on, to go through it. Because one of the things I got out of our discussion today is, so we agree a piece of knowledge out of the head has to have a form of some sort, right? We don't know what that is. But then even if you just think of it in demo terms, in cool demo terms, what should you be able to do with that piece of knowledge? Right. So one of the things that's so exciting, I'm sure you guys are the same keyboard shortcut mavens all over the place, right? Command this and whatever. To be able to use your second hand as a modifier to what your right hand does, I think is so potentially powerful. And Brandel, this is one of the things I hope your friends at Apple will allow to happen. So if you've selected something and you make a fist or whatever it is, if you pull towards you, maybe it pulls out highlights, literally. If you push behind it, maybe it shows you the references behind it. If you pull it to the side, up or down, it can do different things, right? There's so much more potential than the nonsense that I currently have, which is a toolbar with buttons. I mean, it's absolutely pathetic, but one step at a time. So imagine you're going through a lot of knowledge, and this is interesting. So you do a fist, and you move it to the right. That means like. Move it to the left. That means hide it, right? So you have the difference between moving a thing and specifying what you should do with the thing. Once you really get to that level of fluidity of how you interact with it, including voice, including a toolbar, including all of these things, then we can really start to play with what the potential is of this thing, right? And for the sake of removing text for a moment, it could be a 3D model of a car, right? Tom, you mentioned car a few times. You have the 3D model of the car. All the information is there in terms of the 3D components and all the specifications. So one of them can be you pull up and it desegments or segments, right? Maybe if you push it back, you can see the history of how that was made. Blah, blah, blah. But it all comes down to the interactions. Like Doug was fond of saying, if you ski downhill and it takes time to say, turn left 2 degrees, you will fall over, right? If we build fluidity with interaction with knowledge objects, both structurally with many of them and each individual, that interaction itself becomes the medium and allows for further thinking. Yeah, the jet engine maintenance. Exactly. We should be able to do that for all kinds of things, Peter.
So to take the skiing analogy, and I'll just throw this in here real quick, but to take the ski analogy and transfer it to thought. One of the reasons I don't play first person shooters is it drives me crazy that I have to think about what I'm doing with my hands. But if you're talking about, the physical speed at which I move my hands, I mean, it may be reflexive, but it's nothing like the speed at which things float around in my head. And so what we're talking about is taking stuff out of people's heads and showing it. And so you can't say I want to, if you think I want to think about this, it's already too late. So how do you maneuver that, right? Short of a brain implant on the screen.
Well,
yeah.
This is where I think we have to be selfish and look at ourselves first as what suits us. Edgar, come here, please. You were just talking about first-person shooters. So Edgar has become kind of amazing. He sometimes is allowed to play Battlefield 6, which is an adult game, because he did the Star Wars before. Yeah, in the beginning, he was just waffling about, just like, Edgar, what are you doing? I had to be all data and giving him advice. Now, He can only play a bit on the weekends, but he has become so adept. By the time I have told him what to do, he has done it. So good job, man. Plus, he's good at school. But the reason I'm
I would,
bringing him in, it was just to say, whatever interface you can kind of grow into, really is the one that should be supported, Tom. So yeah, sorry,
yeah.
Brandel, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was gonna push back a little bit on getting something out of somebody's head. If it's meant in the trivial sense of this supposition that it's in a head, like well enough formed that all it requires is some kind of notional extraction. You know, that's a very popular kind of refrain right now for people who are into to Mid-Journey and generative AI. People who work at Mid-Journey, I will say, the people who are sort of making the money off of it rather than the people who are not. Um, and as a person who has done a lot of stuff, both with physical, tangible media with their hands, but also, wielding Maya and Blender and Photoshop and Illustrator with their hands, using those as a mechanism for dialogue. I think we need to recognize the amount of resolution that is to the amount of resolving that is done by virtue of actually engaging in a dialogue with the medium. And so as we construct a new medium, we should think about where those dialogic sort of interfaces take us, what we do to kind of work those things out. Something that I'm very interested in is and have no competence in, which is a rarity. Modesty is not one of my virtues, but I have no competence within music, and so I would be really interested in how augmented music it sort of exists and as a thing, particularly for experts and people who really understand things like actual, beep composition and things like that. So I think that's an essential part. Like, what are the dialogues that we want to have? What are the ways in which we resolve? There was Claude made a Claude design tool over the weekend, and I really took people at work to task for calling it a design tool because it again presupposes what design is that like design isn't sort of saying, oh, make a thing with like a couple buttons and a landing page. The design is the resolving of all of those details. I worked in Apple Marcom for many years, and the amount of time it would take to go from brief to the to a page that looked as though it could go on apple.com was normally hours, but we had 2 months most of the time to make one of those pages, not because it takes the time to make something look like an apple.com page, but because it took that time to resolve what it was we meant by that page. Why was it this page and not that page? They all looked perfect. To an outsider, they'd be like, "Oh my God, ship it, man! Give everybody a raise." But what we were doing as we were doing that was resolving which one of the infinitude of pages that we could make should we release as the one for this thing. Yeah, rant over. Sorry.
That was great. I wrote 3 notes based on that. Now, first, on the last thing you said, as also a designer, the word design can be interpreted to mean on purpose, by design. And so absolutely, the execution of a design is very different from the building of the design. And I haven't looked into Claude design yet, but I will. Now, I think, Tom, I can speak for you and say that what you meant by out of head was not fully formed thoughts. I think what you meant was intents, both as a piece of information and as a piece of interaction. Like, you want all of those things to go there. Is that a keyboard? Is that a voice? Is that a gesture? Is that a game console? What is it? So I see you nodding, which is cool. So I think we're all really, really on the same page with that. And then finally, Brandel, and also kind of finally, since we're out of time, you have to check out suno.com. It has become very powerful. Not only do you make one piece of music, you can actually separate the instruments, redo some of them, You can hum things, which I haven't tried to go in there. It's really crazy, and it only struck me the other day. I'm a bit of a super fan camera nerd guy, right? And what does a camera give me? It gives me at one click 24 megapixels of beauty if I point it in the right direction. So to say that something created with AI is by definition useless because it was easy to make, I think that is absolutely rubbish. I think it goes completely back to what you were saying, Brandel. It's a question of the design, right? Is it just faffing about, same as just taking random pictures? But if a relatively thoughtful piece of music, and I have to say what we do here, that's turned into music based on our summaries, is a thoughtful piece of experimenting with the media, which I would say has a very different set of values from the average factory-made pop song, for instance. Not to detract from either one, but we should allow music to become something new. The fact that it sounds like a super professional production, but was easily made, isn't necessarily a bad thing, I say, not defensively at all.
I really appreciate you doing the music, the rappy things and all that kind of thing. It's something I wouldn't have expected myself to do. And you kind of prompting me to say, well, maybe I can do it with these tools and make it look far more professional, as opposed to professional musicians that I know that really work on the wordsmithing and it's a beautiful poetry kind of thing. We're making prose into things that sound like music poetry. And are we corrupting them by making things sound too pretty that are just, but I think it works well at communicating maybe, to
Yeah.
other people. So I really
Well,
appreciate those efforts of yours.
Thank you.
as as gestures, I think it's reasonable, and I think AI memes are pretty funny and pretty interesting. What I bristle at is when people believe that they have resolved more than they have. When people say like a picture paints 1,000 words, but if it only takes a dozen words to make the prompt, then 988 of those words are not yours. They're just fabricated out of thin air. And it's like the things that people do, like if you watch productions, behind the scenes kinds of podcasts and things of Alien Earth or uh, a pluribus, then you see just the monomaniacal attention to detail that people have in order to make the images of the kind they do. And memes, I think, and podcasts or rock hip hop sort of songs of things are sort of rightly interesting and fun and give the opportunity for some glimpse of an insight. But when people say that they are sort of a replacement for the real thing, it's deeply problematic both for the people who do that and for the people who are expecting that they will replace it, because they do not. So yeah, I'm happy that those experiments are there, and also glad for everybody being able to take them in the spirit in which they were created, and for with the consequences that they do or do not have.
It's an interesting thing, Randall, because I'm kind of violently against AI written stuff. None of my tools allow you to have AI really write for you. I think that's kind of stupid. I can see how in some cases it's actually useful when someone has something specific they need produced and it's fully understood by everyone that that had to be by AI. I think that can be okay. Let's say someone has a problem with some kind of writing and the AI turns it into better prose or something. But in general, no, thank you, Eiko. But it becomes a kind of a borderline old person discussion of, oh, these new tools, and Brandel, you're the youngest man here. So it's nice that you for fun are taking up that mantle of this new stuff that makes it easier isn't necessarily good. And I would just push back slightly on saying it's a different kind of good. Like some of my photographs I'm very happy with. I've taken hundreds of thousands. But to have a competition, and I don't think you would disagree with this, Brandel, between one of my photographs and a Rembrandt painting would just, they're visual, but they don't relate at all, right? And that's the kind of thing we need to talk more about, because what we're trying to build here with AI and XR and thinking, you know, what is the new that actually contributes to thinking? It's easy to offload stuff, which was obviously what Doug was against, but to keep it within, yeah, we're thinking about thinking here. We're not thinking about authoring for the sake of adding more pictures or images to some product. I'm reading the comments from Tom and Brandel about against AI. The thing is, when I wrote the intro to the first Future of Text book, one of the things I had to list was different kinds of text. You know, the text in a parking sign is very different from an illegal letter and a love letter and all of that stuff, right? I think we're at such early stages of AI that we haven't really started to understand and list the different kinds of AI and AI uses. You know, there's active, passive, and all these things. I use Claude for so much checking stuff. And in that case, it feels like having a really, really clever assistant. But when I try to do creative stuff, it feels like I have a very, very dim assistant. You know what I mean? You should see Claude trying to write taglines for author. Yeah, it's not very convincing.
Well,
Anyway,
great session, guys. Have a
Yeah.
wonderful week.
yeah, thank you. Exactly.
Bye,
Peter.
everyone.
On that note, have a great week and look forward to seeing you on Monday. And I'll see when Johan Norberg will be invited. I'll invite the bigger audience for that. It'll be interesting. Please check out his book, Peak Human. I think you will absolutely gobble it up. It's an easy read, really thoughtful and brilliant. And yeah, you can check out our podcast of today afterwards, including the song and dance version. Bye. Oh yeah, I'm not going to do memes of you all dancing, I promise. Bye.
Bye bye.